Welcome to the Millennial Body Image Project, where we dive into the unique and messy body image journey that continues to shape our generation.
We're here to flip the script on toxic wellness culture, challenge weight stigma, and tackle the intersectional forces that shape how we see our bodies and our health.
Because your body is not a problem to be fixed.
All right, friends, welcome back to the Millennial Body Image Project. We are excited to bring you a little bit more of a nutrition and health-focused episode today. We're going to be talking about health and the rise of functional medicine. So if you've ever wondered, how did we go from, like we talked about with Pam 2 weeks ago, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels, to you are what you eat, food is medicine, and a moral obligation to be healthy? Let's get into it today. You may have also noticed we did not have a new episode come out on the main feed last week. That's because the final episode of every month is exclusive for our community members over on Patreon, and you can also access it on an Apple Podcast subscription. So, just in case you missed it, on last week's episode, we talked about navigating body image struggles in the Ozempic era. Hello, all of us, very present right now. And we talked about how social media influencers, celebrities, and even doctors are pushing these weight loss meds, making it hard to love your body as it is, as if that wasn't hard enough for all of us already. We're also talking about the ethics of influencers not disclosing their use of weight loss medications and the struggles of dealing with body image in a world obsessed with quick fixes, like Ozempic and these other GLP-1s. So if you're interested in listening to that episode, we are doing a free trial over on Patreon, and there's also one over on Apple Podcasts. So all of those links will be in the description. Okay, so welcome back to Millennial Body Image Project. Today we're going to be talking about the rise of functional medicine and celebrity doctors and the lasting impact that has had on body image, and really the way that it shaped the nutrition field going forward, starting from like the early 2000s all the way to the 2010s. And here we are. It's a mess.
Yeah, I almost feel like in a way you can also call it like the rise of morality in food. There wasn't really that much of that beforehand. There was a lot of morality around bodies, right? Like you're better if you're thinner. Like that's been around for, I'm talking like in like the 2010s when it was like purely vanity. It was very much be thinner, don't eat so much. And even back when I'm thinking of Mad Men era, when it was like the 60s and they were just drinking alcohol and smoking cigarettes and eating like vanilla wafers. There was all of those types of things that were going on, but it was really pointed more towards like just being thin. And whereas like it had nothing to do with health, because we've learned all of this not particularly health promoting, right? That's cool. Like you do you, but let's not pretend that lung cancer is a great place to go. But I think what happened was we saw like from like the 2010s when it was like very much even earlier than that, I would say even like the 90s for sure with heroin chic and all of those things. If you listen to Pam's episode, we talk about pop culture. We talk about that throughout here. And then to me, it's like all of a sudden there was like this shift into the rise of like celebrity doctors hitting TV shows, Dr. Oz, the rise of Michael Pollan and Andrew Weil, and all of these kinds of conversations of these people having that were almost like this breeding of you are, and just the whole, that sentence, you are what you eat, is riddled with morality. It's literally putting you like every single thing that you eat says something about you as a person. And haha, shocker, now all of a sudden we feel like, oh, there's good and bad foods. I wonder why. I wonder why we now think that is when there are sentences and things like you are what you eat as a tagline and as a phrase that was very popular at that time. It makes sense that there would be this like health superiority complex and morality around food and a lot of fear mongering that was going on around food, because we wanted to be the best. And the rise of that whole thing.
It's really interesting because we went from, especially if you listen to Pam's episode, we talked about how the models were like, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels, right? But there was an aspect in the 90s of, oh, that is an unattainable body type in terms of the heroin chic model body type. Then we switch into the 10s and it's you are what you eat and food is medicine. And now, not only the morality, but the onus is on the individual of take your health by the reins because nobody else is going to do it for you. And then we have the rise of all these different celebrity doctors and health documentaries, Supersize Me and Grain Brain and the Omnivore's Dilemma, that basically was giving people the at-home tools to, quote, take charge of their own health. But this is where the nutrition jungle started, right? So we talk about the nutrition jungle
Ago.
Yeah, years ago. There's so many different nutrition, wellness, health, dieting rules, shoulds, suggestions, and all this stuff that are just out there and available to you that makes it really confusing to, one, listen to your body, to figure out what's going to work for me in terms of my goals for my health, my body image, my relationship with food, and everything. But this is where a huge shift, like Christina said, went towards health being equated with morality. Food is medicine and you are what you eat. Talk about raising a generation of disordered eating or eating disorder tendencies.
My gosh, yes.
And the nutrition jungle is what we were just mentioning, is it becomes so confusing. This really was the age of Supersize Me, was a huge one. And it goes on to this day. Over the summer, we did a couple different breakdowns of different health documentaries that are out there, like Hack Your Health, Secrets of Your Gut. And there's every single one of these has every food is poison. And these are all the things that you should be doing for your health. And every single one promises to have the answers. How the heck are you supposed to know what you're supposed to do? And so what people end up doing is, oh, this one says no to this. This one says no to this. This one says no to this. I'm just going to eliminate everything. And all you have left is water and maybe some leaves.
Yeah. Also, I think one of the things too that it gently note, this is all under the umbrella that we understand that the food industry in American culture is messed up. A lot of problems here and all of this stuff. What I don't like about what happened and how this rise happened was because things that we don't really have control over, we are then, the propaganda was that we actually do have control over it if we have enough money, access, and power and ability and social clout in order to get it. I think that's what's really difficult, is that this whole thing, it's like we basically got access to at home, in our face, food as medicine propaganda that told us that Supersize Me, like no shit, his health went down the drain during the documentary. I don't understand what was so shocking about that to people, because of course, McDonald's is not considered to be a major health promoting, nutrient dense food source at all. And of course, if you eat it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single meal and don't have access to other things, you might start to see results in your labs accordingly. Of course, right? What that documentary fails to share is that sometimes eating is better than not eating. And that's not McDonald's fault. They're supposed to be convenient and fast, and that's what they're promising. And let's also not ignore, delicious. Okay? And so to me, I think one of the things that really bothers me about that access to that type of propaganda, like Grain Brain, the Omnivore's Dilemma, literally anything Michael Pollan ever did is like the same kind of propaganda. Heavy eye roll. I'm like, dude, like you're not even a medical professional. You were a chef or a food blogger, and now you're doing all this stuff and you act like you have this authority on this. I think the thing that bothers me is that they really ignore that it does not take into consideration the actual problem with American food industry and having access to every person all over the world and all over the country getting access to a variety of different types of food. And what it does is it puts, like, I think you named this, like you labeled this like health libertarianism or something. I think that's one thing that you said that we can go into in a second. I want you to go into it. But it really does do that because it's putting the shame in you, right? If you're going to McDonald's because maybe that's all you have access to that day or everything that you have, and then you are what you eat and you watch Supersize Me and McDonald's is now bad. Now you think, oh, great, I'm making bad choices. And now anything that happens with my health is now all my fault. And it's no, let's also take into consideration food deserts and all of these different types of things and people not having access to stuff. Right now, if you're going to the grocery store and you're trying to buy all organic, you better have a trust fund abuse. Because, or you have kids who don't throw the strawberries on the ground. Every time my kids throw the strawberries on the ground, I'm like, that's it, it's all hers. But there's so much like morality built into it. And I think that's the thing that, sure, was that like cool education and things to learn, but it embedded into people that this is your fault if you're making these types of food choices and you need to make better food choices. And I think the other part to me that's really hard that gets brought up is that this was happening at the same time where people were starting to have a lot more advocacy for different types of symptoms and increased types of testing that was going on, and the rise of kind of functional integrative type approaches, like enter Andrew Weil and the work that he's done in Arizona, which is a cool, like a really incredible hospital, and like the stuff that he's doing in understanding how food impacts our body is incredible. But when you pair that work with things like Supersize Me and this morality of you are what you eat, it's a breeding ground for fear around eating. And I think that's where we start to see that kind of rise starting to happen, with it changed from vanity to this says everything about you. It says everything.
Let's not kid ourselves, right? We personally were swept up in all of this. We loved this. This is one of the entire reasons why we went into the field of nutrition and went back to school.
Ate this up so hard, you guys. I loved it.
Because this is a pattern that I had seen when we started to have more access in terms of availability to these more, what used to be called complementary and alternative medicine, CAM, right? Is now like integrative and functional medicine is what it's called. People started to be more aware of, whoa, I'm not feeling great. Like something's going on with me. I don't really know. I go to my primary care or whatever, and they tell me my labs are fine. And in the past, it would be like, okay, well, I must be fine. But now there's more access to, there's some integrative, some complementary clinics and stuff popping up, right? So if people are having these unexplained, unresolved symptoms or just not feeling like themselves after going to primary care, they would seek out like an integrative doctor, a naturopathic doctor,
acupuncturist or something like that, or a different kind of information.
Yes, exactly. The cool thing about that is you're taking a more integrative, which means like whole person approach to health. So we're not just stopping at your lab reference ranges. We're looking into your stress. We're looking into your sleep. We're looking into dieting history. We're looking into all this other stuff, right? And probably doing more extensive testing rather than just blood work. So you're getting a lot more answers. And because of the way that the US insurance system is set up, you're getting to spend a lot more time with a practitioner, which is really helpful for a lot of people. Now, the downside is it's mostly out of pocket, so it is a lot more expensive, which takes us back to access, right? But a big problem when you combine this rise of food is medicine and you are what you eat with people seeking out solutions with all these different functional and integrative practices, it's just cut out every single potentially inflammatory food possible and take 27 supplements and then you'll feel better, which we continue to see to this day. And I'm not saying that every single functional and integrative practice does this, right? This is just like a big trend that we have seen over the years. Pair that with this rise of what I called health libertarianism, which is where the onus of health is being put on the individual. Before the rise of all of this, it was like, if I have a health problem, I go to the doctor. Doctor's word is God. I follow it to a T. I should get better because they are the medical expert. What has started to happen, and I think we mentioned this in a previous episode when the Kardashians' new GLP-1, is there has been over the last, I would say 15 and even more years, this kind of erosion of trust in the American medical system. And this feeds into it in a way because it feels like nobody's listening to me. If you go to your regular doctor and they say your labs are fine, but you feel awful, it's like, well, I'm not going to get a satisfactory answer or solution. So that trust does erode a little bit in your practitioner. And that's not necessarily that practitioner's fault. That's not their skill set, maybe. They also, because of the American medical system, only have about 5 to 15 minutes to see you, which is not adequate to do an intake. And so then when you start to take health into your own hands, the onus of health, like I mentioned, is put on the individual. I've been given all of these different tools from my new provider or from 68 different documentaries or books that I've been reading about health.
Yeah.
I now have the tools. If I continue to feel sick, it's my fault
Yeah.
because I have the tools to be able to do it, even if those were never the tools for you. So this is where we see this rise of the food as medicine movement, and people are looking for at-home or more holistic, integrative, functional, complementary solutions for a lot of their different health problems. And when you pair that with what seems like the very broken American food system, of course, people are going to be like, oh my God, there's GMOs in my food.
The glyphosate.
What even is in my food? And then you have stuff like the rise of paleo and the ancestral health movement, and then Whole30 and veganism. And it's not like veganism.
Oh, the
didn't
raw
exist
food,
before.
the raw food movement. Are you kidding?
Yes.
Yeah.
But there was a boon of all these different things. And then comes it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. Which means you're on a diet forever.
Like a lifestyle is something you have to afford, right? Intertwined in a lifestyle is affordability for that type of lifestyle. Like I'm not like, it's not a trip, it's a lifestyle. I'm vacationing. I'm living worldwide. Like I don't have that kind of vibe, like that kind of money.
Pitbull.
But like it has that kind of, it's a lifestyle kind of thing. You have to have access in order to have that. And so to me, that also shows like social clout. There was social clout in the way that you took care of yourself, the things that you had access to, and all of the different aspects of it. Something else that made me think of too is what was really difficult, we're not even really discussing yet, is that women weren't even studied at that time. We didn't even study women's health at the time that this was all going on. And so we have absolutely no, like when you went to the doctor and they dismissed your symptoms and the things that were going on, we took it as, oh, they don't care about me. They're not listening to me. They didn't know anything about you. They didn't have any education.
Here's birth control.
Yeah, they didn't have any education about what was going on. And then you have these bloggers writing about this stuff that's incredibly validating because they're telling you, I felt sluggish. I felt fatigued. I had this weird weight gain that I didn't understand. Oh, it turned out I had a thyroid disorder. And then everyone's, oh, I have a thyroid disorder. Like that's what it is. And like thyroid is really hard to get tested. And your regular medical provider is not going to do deep dive lab results because they're only going to look at your TSH. And we know that you can have symptoms without having a diagnosable thing. And so people are left with this distrust and also left with this feeling of, I have to go and find something out. But when they're going and researching and reading these things, we're not looking at credentials. We're not verifying any of these things. These are just people telling us, but it was incredibly validating to read these things and to see this stuff and people hear this. And when you go to your functional medicine doctor and they tell you, no, there's more that we can do. We should test deeper. It's, oh my God, thank God. I have this ability. Great. I'll pay whatever you have to pay. I don't want to feel tired anymore. I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to have disaster pants anymore and be told it's totally fine. There's something wrong here. And there was. And it's very real for you. And I think that's what makes it so difficult is that they didn't have any education on women's bodies. They literally didn't think it mattered. And then they didn't take into consideration all the different things that we were going through. If they don't have something that can treat it like a pharmaceutical medicine or an approach that will fix it, they don't know about it. And so their perspective is very different. So it makes a lot of sense if you have this thing that you're just like, I don't understand why I'm feeling this way, that you would have this major distrust and to look outside. And then if you have this movement of these documentary series and these types of things coming up, like you are what you eat, it puts so much personal responsibility on this. Like, especially, I don't know, I was thinking about like the first time people do something like the Whole30, you felt amazing. People felt incredible. And then they couldn't replicate it again. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it created this environment internally for people to feel like, I'm just not doing it good enough. It worked. This works. I feel better when I'm doing this. Why can't I stick with it? Why is there, and it becomes this, you are what you eat. I'm making bad choices. I'm doing something wrong. And I feel this way because it's my fault. and all of this type of stuff. It was the perfect breeding ground for major morality around food and shaming and guilt around food choices.
But here's the thing, is it's very understandable why we were all caught up in this. Because when you do something like one of these food as medicine type protocols, it finally feels like you have an aspect of control over what is going on in your body, when it feels like everything is out of control and you have no idea what's going on. And this is one of the huge reasons why Christina and I why we met, actually. So thank you, Functional Medicine Movement, is we both, after struggling with our own health issues and being in careers that we were not satisfied with, we went the Institute for Integrative Nutrition for a health coaching certification. And then after we were like, we actually legally will not be able to practice in our states. So we're going to go back and get our master's degree and license. But in that mindset, so that's like 2014, right? Let me tell you how ingrained we were in this. I don't know how long you guys have been along, all right? But if you've been here for a while, you know that I literally used to have a food blog that was called Real Food with Dana, okay? I have like 400 recipes going back to 2014 on that website. This was my entire life, okay?
Also,
it was based on like paleo and ancestral health, because at the time when I was in the middle of trying to figure out that I had celiac disease and all these different gut issues and hypothyroidism and candida and all of these different things while working with a functional medicine provider, I was trying to figure out, okay, in between my very expensive sessions with this provider, what can I do on my own to try and support my own health so I can have more energy, so I can have more regular GI stuff, so I can be more comfortable with my life, while I was also trying to figure out career-wise, what do I want to do with my life? This we both were. And it felt, oh my gosh, not only can I take control of my own health, I can teach other people how to take control of their own health by using food and other stuff.
So good.
But here's the thing. We're still both nutritionists at the heart of this. We recognize that food is very powerful, and it is. And you can use food to help in your healing journey. At the same time,
it's remarkable what a nourished body can do.
Exactly. At the same time, we've come very far from the very orthorexic food as medicine, and morality for us and the way that we practice is no longer attached to the way that you eat. But this was the issue at the time, is it really felt like you had to do it the right way, and you had to do it all or nothing, or you were doing it completely wrong. And at the same time, this is of every single food is inflammatory and blah, blah, blah. And we're not allowed to eat sugar and gluten and dairy and soy and beans and rice and corn and blah, 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 and every single thing. Oh, let me look at my magazine of different food as medicine diets. Which one am I going to try out this time? Once you've tried out the paleo autoimmune protocol, you're then going to go to this. You're then going to go to this. Oh, maybe a SIBO diet, or maybe a candida diet.
21-day fix.
This 21-day sugar detox, Whole30. 30-day paleo challenge, right? Like all these different things. And they were everywhere. And we were all caught up in it because we all wanted to be able to take control of our own health. And we were fed that if you just did the food right and you just took the supplements, that everything would be within your control. 10 years later, obviously we can say, not the case. But at the time, that's really what...
Bring this back to body image too, because I think we really honed in, we understand now the morality that happened and the why it felt so good and why we all got attached to it, ourselves included, hardcore. What's interesting is it ties back to our body image and our health and body being tied together now. One of the things too is that at the time, functional medicine doctors still went through medical school. They still had deeply tied weight stigma built into their learning and their education and everything like that. The difference was, and this was interesting, is a lot of times we would go into a functional practice and they'd be like, I don't practice dieting. I believe in body diversity and blah, blah, blah. They wouldn't say body diversity. They would say things like, oh, I don't weigh my client. I don't weigh, my one doctor that I worked with, they didn't weigh the patients. She's like, I don't care, you know? And I was like, she goes, but I remember them very clearly saying, but in the back of my mind, that is a symptom. Body diversity was now a symptom to them that they felt like whether they outwardly said that to you or not was one refreshing for some people because some people would be like, oh, this felt really good. For me, as someone who had disordered eating in the past and didn't want to follow like a diety type vibe, that was really refreshing to me to not have that. But then it made my weight was still pathologized and still something that was a symptom of all these other things. And if we cracked the code, then I would be healthy when my body started getting smaller. And if your body started getting larger, oh no, we haven't cracked the code yet. And so built into this was this idea of like your body image and what your health and body said about your health, right? If your body was not smaller, then there was something wrong and they needed to get to the bottom of it. There was something going on with your hormones. There was something going on with whatever. Yes, that can happen. Absolutely. We know metabolic can lead to weight gain. We know that untreated thyroid disorders, Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism, all kinds of stuff can lead to weight gain. We know that. The maths, the science is there. But the whole idea that if your body doesn't get smaller, then it's not being treated properly and that you need to hone in a little bit more or remove something else, or there's something else causing inflammation because that's why your weight is there because of inflammation, then you need to be more anti-inflammatory. And it kind of, again, kind of drive home this whole idea of smaller is better, smaller is healthy. And I need to restrict more, eat cleaner, do all these things, and my body will be smaller. Therefore, I'll be healthier and I'll be better. And it just brought in this whole like, you are what you eat, and your body tells people what you eat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the body image piece gets brought into this in a very deeply moralistic, shame riddled way. And it creates this obsession over eating clean enough, doing enough, looking good enough. And every time you go to your friend's birthday party or you have a slice of pizza and your body's not changing, it's my fault. I ate that inflammatory food. I know better. I shouldn't have done that. It's like what we used to tell kids. You shouldn't have done that. It's very moralistic, very shaming type of language that we use on ourselves. And then we wonder why we have this really weird relationship with food and body sizes right now as adult millennials because, I don't know, because we started off with this whole place of like pure vanity. You better be able to wear low rise jeans. And then we tied into you are what you eat and you are what you look like. And so what you look like says everything that I need to know about your health and your ability to do stuff and how you take care of yourself. And if you're not taking care of yourself, then shame on. But really, all of those things can be very separate from each other. And yet we have internalized that. And I think like Dana's tag about health libertarianism, the onus of all of that being on the person and on the individual. No wonder we're down this rabbit hole. No wonder we're seeing a rise of millennial families buying homesteads. No wonder I'm seeing the children of older millennials having orthorexia. No wonder that's all happening because this is the framework and the timeline that we all sat in together and walked through. And now we have to we have this idea of we can't trust our food. We can't trust our medical providers. We're on our own. We have to do this all by ourselves. And everything that we're eating is poison. And we have to take personal responsibility over all of this. And you better be thin. And there's so much wrapped into where we are today and how we got here. And it's been really, I think, really interesting seeing the shifting happen and being able to look backwards and look at our own piece in the puzzle, right? And like how, like at various times where we sat, and it's like, man, it's so complicated. But yeah, this is how I see it. And that's why we're seeing such a rise in homesteading and orthorexia and all of these different things.
This is where orthorexia came from.
Oh,
Orthorexia was not a named thing.
It's still not a
or
diagnosable DSM-5.
Practitioners recognize what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it sits with ARFID. So like to me, like if you have a really that's how we would get diagnosed nowadays. It'd be diagnosed as ARFID, right? Which is a highly restrictive diet, but it is.
Orthorexia was never even a term, which if you don't know what the definition of orthorexia, it's an unhealthy obsession with eating healthy.
Yeah.
And this is where the rise of orthorexia is right here. But the interesting about this is bringing it back to body image is this whole era really changed the way that we spoke about our bodies. Before it was like, oh, I just want to be thin. And then it was like, oh, I just want to look healthy. What does healthy look like? You just want to be thin, but it's just a wrapping paper, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
And it also changed the way that we were pursuing body changes, right? If you look in the 80s and 90s and even the early 2000s, it's still like The Biggest Loser and it's just a massive calorie deficit and eat less and exercise more. And now it's, I'm going to eliminate sugar and I'm going to do this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to do all these different protocols and things. And what really is the insidious thing about this is for people who already had disordered eating or eating disorder tendencies, this was fully a permission slip to keep restricting and to eliminate a whole bunch of other foods, but under the guise of health. Oh, totally. I'm doing this for my health.
Yes. But you know what else I was thinking also that's interesting is that you either fell into one of two camps. You either fell into traditional calories in, calories out, eat half of what you're doing, and then you'll be magically half the size, as if there's like some kind of calculator inside, some guy inside going, oh, we don't need this one. We don't need that. That's not how a body works. It's so much more complicated than that. But you either believed in exercise and eating less, or you believed that food was freaking everything. And if you got your food right, that everything else was going to unlock this key and everything was going to trickle down as a side effect within that. And otherwise, you didn't really fall into any one place. So either you had disordered eating or you had disordered eating. Or you were one of the amazing people out there who were like, I don't know what the hell these crazy people are doing. I've been farming for years. I don't know what you guys are talking about. I think that's the thing. It's like you either fell in one of two camps, which is why the rise of the shows like Jillian Michaels' show and stuff like that was so popular at the same time. But also that was so deeply shamed by functional medicine and integrative practitioners. Oh my gosh, they don't know. They don't know. And it's just everything about it was so deeply moralistic and superiority around food and bodies and how to approach it and everything like that. And so to me, it makes so much sense that we're all sitting here. What do I eat? Like, how do I feed myself? And how do I afford to eat this way and that way? And how do I do all this stuff? And do I need to start homesteading? Is the world collapsing? There's some things that are happening. And I think this is like a really interesting plight for millennials specifically, because we've lived through this whole, a very like influential times in our development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the last thing I'll say on this, and we'll probably have to continue this on a Patreon episode, is like, this was also the rise of food being pointed to as a cause and contributor to disease. This is really where a lot of that came from. And when you have stuff like grain brain and the whole philosophy around that is like gluten is the root of all evil. And then we have sugar is the root of all evil. And then we have carbs are the root of all evil with keto. And then protein is the root of all evil with veganism, and not necessarily protein, but animal protein, leads us to this place as millennials where we've been in this nutrition jungle for so long and you can't see the trees through the forest, because it's like, how am I supposed to make sense of all of this stuff when I've been to a functional medicine doctor who essentially told me, well, if I had been eating paleo or whatever, I never would have gotten my chronic illness, because that is legitimately something that has been said to many of my clients. And when you have a piece of information like that, how are you supposed to untangle that?
Yeah.
How are you supposed to move past all of this stuff when, on the one hand, we know that food can help enhance your health and be a health promoting behavior, but how do we not engage with it in a way that takes up all of your brain space and in a really orthorexic way feels like, well, if I just control my food, I can control my body size and the way I show up in the world and the way that people like me and the way that I am loved and the way that I belong and the way that health is equated to body size. It's just, no wonder everyone's so
Exhausting.
confused.
And it's
Yes,
exhausting.
it's exhausting. Oh, yes. So
We
we
see
obviously have a
you.
lot more that we can say about this, right? Yeah. We've been there. We see you. We have waded through all of these rivers and we will help you wade through it. We also have a ton of other content on chronic health conditions and this very popular episode that we have called the Functional Medicine Pipeline, which I'll link in the show notes. We also have episodes on undieting your labs and how to look at chronic health conditions through the lens of different blood work labs, but then also stool testing, and another episode called Is Weight a Symptom? So if you're interested in more episodes and content like this, don't worry, they
We
are
help.
coming. And we have a whole list of them that we will put for you in the show notes. And I think we'll have to continue this conversation in Patreon in a couple days as well.
I also am really curious. I'd love for people to share a little bit about like how this has impacted you and where you are in this journey. I think that's interesting. Maybe you're coming to us and you're like, I'm still in this jungle and I'm trying to find my way out and I'm trying to find a different, more flexible type of approach. Maybe you've been out of it for a while and you're reflecting back on it. Like, I'd love to hear from you a little bit about what's been going on and where you're at. And also message us, slide into our DMs, send us a little message, let us know, or come over to Patreon. Yay! And talk about this and bring it up because we would love to hear from you and love to be a part of this because this is what we're aiming to do in that community is really get to know each other and support our listeners in this journey because it's complicated, obviously. And it's really hard to navigate and you're not alone.